Good evening. My name is Richard Cooper. I am the president and CEO of NYSpin, a not-for-profit corporation. I would like to thank our sponsors. Big Visible has been a sponsor for several years, and we greatly appreciate their support. Tonight, we are privileged to be hosted by Moody's. Compliments of NYSpin member Beth Kraskin. Thank you very much, Beth. Devin Hedge works for NYSpin Platinum sponsor Big Visible Solutions, where he is a management consultant to large organizations, taking organizations through agile transformations with a focus on creating innovation engines within organizations. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Devin Hedge.
Thank you. There we go. So, what am I doing tonight? Well, hopefully not wasting your time. So, I want to talk about Agile and highly regulated industry. How many people are in an Agile environment? Raise your hand. See who's here. Okay, very good. How many people are in a highly regulated industry? So there's a joke about government in that somehow, right? Turns out every time I talk about this topic, everyone is regulated in some way. But it's just how regulated are they, right? To what degree? I think when I got most interested in this was a conversation with a fellow PMI community member, Jesse Fuel, where we were talking about all the nutbag engagements that we took on. Like, why would we want to go into that environment and try and do Agile there? And he says, because it's hard. I said, yeah. How long have I been doing this, Agile? My mother would probably argue all my life, because it turns out it's a little bit of a mindset, just as much as it is anything else. I backed into this very much like the gentleman in the back was talking about their path to agility. I was in the waterfall mainframe world doing ISO 9000, 2000, ISO 9001, ISO 12207, and on and on and on. CMMI, CMM, level 3. CMMI, level 3, and then 4. And I said one day, all right, acronyms aside, this is not really adding value. I had a client. It was actually 3 clients rolled into one. There was a continent called Europe that was deregulating their telecommunications industry. And it turns out telecommunications is pretty nasty in terms of regulatory compliance. Every time you pick up the phone and dial somewhere overseas, how many tax jurisdictions do you cross? Every time your voice crosses a router, there is a possibility of that being considered a tax jurisdiction transaction. 3 clients, they wanted a highly flexible billing system. So we did all the right things at the firm I was at. We had the quality process group, engineering group. We were ISO 9000, 2000 certified. We were CMM level 3 or 4, something like that. The product we delivered was so bad, they fired us. All 3 companies within a month. How could a company deliver something and still be compliant with every single regulation and every single process control? That got me thinking, there has to be a better way. Fortunately, Mike Beadle and Uncle Bob Martin came up with something called DX. Anyone ever heard of DX? In the Army, when we changed something out because it was no longer useful, we DX something. But that wasn't what this was about. So, how many people have heard of extreme programming? Okay. So, my path to agility was waterfall to RUP, because I thought that had to be a better way. But you know what I ran into? It wasn't. It was just as bad. But it was a lot more flexible. Why? Because waterfall was really not waterfall. How many people are doing waterfall and it's really not waterfall? Do you keep going back and changing things? We call it a change control process, right? Well, in waterfall, there's really not much of a change control process. That's something we bolted on after the fact. In true waterfall, you would have not left the previous gate without being complete. To have a change is to say that you failed. So DX came along. And what that was is if you take XP and you flip it upside down, it looks like DX. DX is a lean version of RUP. And for many organizations, it's actually not a bad approach. If you're already in the RUP cycle, just lean it down. But I was finding that wasn't working either for me where I wanted to go, because something called the .com bubble came along. I said, oh God, you want this by when? So I started looking around for tools I could pick up. I'd already been introduced to Mike Beadle, Bob Merton. But then there was this one article in Fast Company that had nothing to do with Agile as a process. It was an article about a Navy boat captain, actually he was a commander, Navy boat commander who had just taken over a supply ship, and he was like, how do I get my hands wrapped around this thing? Every day something is different. Every single day I wake up thinking I know what the day is going to be like, and I'm wrong. How do I deal with that? So he was looking around, and he says, well, when we did training, we kind of just every day got people together. We stood in a circle. What did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? What are your impediments? And it was easy. We had a nice little board, done, not done, nice check mark, task list, if you will. And he was doing something that seemed so natural to me. I mean, standing around the huddle, hey, how's it going? That's natural, right? For me, it was really natural because of the military history, teams of 5 to 9. That's the way the Army's organized at its nucleus. Turns out the Romans figured that out how long ago? They used it to conquer Persia? There might be something to that. So that was how I got into this. .com bubble goes away, and Devin needs a job. So he goes back to programming. And the only job in the town I was at was government. And government is interesting. The kind of government I took on, I'd already been doing Agile stuff. I'd picked up Scrum. So I said, I'm not going back. Sorry. So I started doing Stealth Scrum. Stealth Scrum, you'll find it in many organizations where some developers just get fed up and a little team lead says, we're going to give an update. We're going to do 1-week iterations. That way, my project status report, I can massage it so that it comes out. And it looks waterfall, but in reality, I'm doing Stealth Scrum. Works great for the special forces too. Just saying. FBI said, I want that. They were hooked on it like crack. And I was like, well, why? And they were like, well, we see you producing. The company I was at then had just gone to, anyone ever done a project rescue? Project rescue? That is a miserable thing. It's a project that has already failed, and you've been contracted to come in and fix things, right? So the firm I was at was contracted by the Marine Corps. Project was $7 million over budget, 2 years behind, hadn't delivered a thing. We did it in 12 weeks. Marine Corps was like, oh, hooah. How do we know that you really delivered what you're supposed to deliver? We're going to take 10 weeks to do independent validation and verification. So the FBI had caught wind of this, and they're like, we want it. I'm like, that's great, let's do it. Here's how we do it. First person who spoke up was the lawyer. I'm sorry, federal acquisition regulations require you to do what? And started naming off all the things that basically unwound all that success. And I'm thinking, there's got to be a way to do this. Worked with them, worked with the contracting officer. We got it there. What was supposed to be a 2-year project, we delivered in 3 months. They were like, we want more. The CIO, the CTO said, we're doing this as far as we can. They were coming off of the largest IT failure in the history of the world. History of the world. That's huge. It was a case management system. I don't know if you ever ran across that one. That was billions and billions of dollars of delivering nothing, right? So that was how I got into this. Now, over time, I finally landed at the Securities Exchange Commission. This is where things got really interesting because, the team that I was coaching, because this was my first coaching gig, and I was like, wow, these executives, they get this, they want this. Lawyers, not so much. They were kind of scared. Program manager, really scared because his job was on the line. And as many of you live in this situation, it was the first time I had to deal with something called Dodd-Frank. I'd already been dealing with Sarbanes-Oxley, but now we had Dodd-Frank, Mr. Frank. And that was throwing a wrinkle into our process controls and throwing a wrinkle into actually what it was we were supposed to be delivering to market. Securities Exchange Commission, there was the EDGAR system. How many, EDGAR, ever heard of it? Yeah, small little system, all the world's financial records in one location. I have a picture of that silo. Scary. I lived, much as you do, in the world of don't screw up, you might crash the world's markets. Okay. So my goal, long-winded intro, my goal is to share ways that quality assurance managers, and that's kind of where I want to focus, but it applies to everyone. I want to focus on quality assurance managers, how they can actually be enablers for Agile. Because interestingly enough, at the Securities Exchange Commission, there was the lawyers, the program manager. I used you saw my ninja, right? My business ninja skills, right? I used my business ninja skills on them, got them through it. But it was the quality assurance manager who was the final holdout. I could not get past them because we had achieved CMMI level 4 and we are not going back. We've got an audit coming up. And of course I bring out all the, stuff that Sutherland had done over in Europe with CMMI level 5 and how it actually makes CMMI level 5 better and keeps all your compliance controls in play. So that's why I focused on this. Highly volatile, highly complex markets. How many people are feeling this? Are you feeling how complex this is? I have one CEO of the third largest insurance company, a health insurance company that I've worked with. He said, I want concept to cash in 10 weeks. That was his goal. 10 weeks. Can you do that and still meet all of your compliance? Yeah, you can, provided everyone actually signs up to do it. Why did he want that? Obamacare. How quickly was he having to change his company? A 175-year-old company with a culture just as old. In fact, I think some of the original people are still there. I mean, he needed to change. He needed to change fast. And what did he do? He did what every CEO who loves walking down the street down the road here loves to do. They said, I'll buy innovation. I'll find who are the nimble players. I'll go buy them. I'll outsource around my stodgy old employees. And you know what? None of that worked. Not a bit of it. So, adoption of adaptive management practices, sitting astride agile values and principles. And the last point there is going to be the most important point. So, the $1 million question. What is agile? There's a wonderful YouTube video. Highly recommend it just for a laugh. It's about the iPhone 5, where it's a cartoon. A person comes into a store and says, yes, I'd like to get the iPhone 5 because it's got the 4 Gs. I need to get the 4 Gs. I've actually had people come up to me and say, I want to get the Agile. You want to get the what? The Agile? What do you think that is? Agile is just simply a set of values and principles. That's it. And that's why so many companies fail at this. They fail at it. And we're not talking about that. We talk about transparency all the time, but the second the Agile fails, we stop talking about it. Why? It's because everyone who is trying to implement Agile, as if it's a thing, thinks it's a process methodology. And they don't want to admit that they tried to implement a process methodology and failed. Newsflash, it's not a process methodology. Also, it's not less disciplined than traditional management. This one really hurts people. Developers will say, oh, we're agile. We don't need to do documentation. You heard that one? I hear it all the time. I'm like, are you out of your mind? One, you have to have documentation if you are in a highly regulated environment. Period. End of story. Where's your evidence? Yeah. Can you bake that into the source code? Sure. Can you write ways to automatically generate those documents so that you never write a document? Absolutely. CMMI level 5 shop, they're using Wiki. They threw Microsoft Word, God rest its soul, out the door. All right? Self-documenting code. They had to do it. Here's the next one that people really struggle with. Because fundamentally, for the last 30 years, we've gotten this wrong. All right? And we need to talk about it. Because you're not going to succeed in a highly regulated environment if you don't wrap your head around this. What makes a product a quality product? Is it 0 defects? This is the one I hear. We're striving for 0 P1s and P2s in production. Elegant coding that conforms to requirements. Low development costs. High performance. What is that anyway? Rapid development. User-friendly. Lots of features. No. I don't know. I threw this quote in here because I think it's a quote that can be twisted, and I like twisting quotes, right? Quality in things exists merely in the mind which contemplates it. Why do I say that? If you think about a regulator coming in and auditing you, what's their version or definition of quality? Who cares about these different things? Different people care about different things. Most organizations, software development, when they start to go towards Agile, they probably haven't actually done some of these things. And they're thinking that going Agile is this silver bullet that makes them not have to worry about it. The reality is you got to worry about it all if you want to go fast and still be compliant. Right? So, hard truth about quality. More quality for one person may mean less quality for another. So whose opinion counts? A lot of people is the answer. There's no one person. It's not the quality manager, right? Is that a quality car? How many people drove one? I confess I never drove one. I have gone to a junkyard and ripped the front out of one. This part right here is one of the best steering mechanisms. It's really lightweight and great for drag racing cars. And I've built a couple of those. Here's their development specification down here. Car was not to weigh over 2,000 pounds and cost more than $2,000. Let's go. So, if we go back to our list again, conforms to requirements, check. They made it. Passenger safety, not so much. Meets design and manufacturing constraints? Yep. They got their return on their investment too. Did they meet their cost constraints? Yeah, just fine. In fact, if you look at their problem on paper, it made no sense to fix the gas tank problem, defect. It made no sense to them. Why? Cost per car didn't outweigh the benefits. They did a cost analysis and they said spending $11 extra per car would cost too much. We would blow our cost containment. We wouldn't get our ROI. Let's just not do it. Don't worry about it. Didn't exactly work for them. I think my own battery's dying. So, is conformance to requirements enough? We talk about requirements traceability. Requirements. Do you have the requirements traceability matrix? Are you in the matrix? I don't know. No one knows what the matrix is. If you asked for a Pinto, I gave you a Cadillac. Gold-plated. Right? We do that with software, right? We gold-plate software. Tell people not to do that, but you know what is fascinating about developers? They like to think. They'll write a piece of code. They'll get on the A train going up. I love the A train, by the way. They'll get up Upper West Side and they'll go, wow, I know a better way to do that. And they come back tomorrow and they gold plate it without ever asking if that was okay. They were just like, well, of course you want me to do it better, right? Whose opinion is paramount then? Person paying the bill. So at the end of the day, is shipping your product a business decision or a quality decision? Who pays your bill? Moody's is our host. Who pays Moody's bill? Right? The SEC. Who's the SEC? Who pays the SEC's bill? It's not the taxpayer, interestingly enough. Much like the U.S. Postal Service, it's all fees, right? I don't want to get into that one. It's not worth it. So, you've got defects. I have defects. I've got lots of defects. But I have no P1 and P2. So is it okay if management doesn't give you more time to fix more defects? How do you know that answer? I mean, how do you know really the answer to that one? A business owner goes, risk is mitigated, right? The attorneys say, we've done a risk analysis. We're okay with that. Then it goes out. No one buys your product because they think it stinks. Right? So, points to ponder. So, what is and isn't quality? Well, okay. Turns out it's not implementing all the requirements in the requirements document. One of the things that I love about Agile is that it took the, I'll call them almost suspect at this point in time, chaos report numbers, which is 64% of all requirements are rarely or never used. All the features that you have in a product are rarely or never used. I have a financial services corporation, largest single 401k company in the world. Theirs are around 82%. Of all the retail features on their website, 82% are never used. How much did they spend on that? Not just spend on the actual development. But when you put that stuff out there, how much time elapsed to ensure that all the language on the website was right? That you're not making, there's a word, basically you're not telling the investor what to do. You're telling the investor there's risk involved with this and that you may or may not want to do this, right? Advisory language. Quality isn't ensuring consistency with older products. Would people say that Apple makes quality products? They actually make okay quality products. They make some really kick and design products, right? Well designed. Not necessarily the highest quality. But what do? They build in to where it's really not even, this product is not compatible with two products, two years ago. They do that, it's planned obsolescence. And then the degree of excellence, right? CMMI level 5, still turn out a junky product that doesn't conform to regulatory compliance. So really quality is fitness for a business purpose. And that's what the principle I want you to keep in your mind as we run through the rest of this. Now I'm going to speed up, okay? Okay. Process compliance, not a quality product. Can be, but doesn't necessarily mean that it is. Okay? Another principle. Process compliance does not necessarily mean regulatory compliance. You need a team to vet that. So that's my first point in the handout there I gave you. You notice I gave you a handout with absolutely almost nothing in it. I wanted you to have something to write on. I mean, come on. And I actually wanted you to take notes. All right. So what's the implications? What's the implications? I already said it. You need a team. All right. You're going to need a cross-functional team made up of folks who are in regulatory part of your organization. All right. They need to get trained in the Agile values and principles. They need to be able to get this. All right. You also need program management to get Agile values and principles. All right. You need executive management. You need your governance, both investment governance, okay, from a portfolio. Oh, nice. Portfolio man. Ooh. I don't know. Portfolio management. So I had two definitions, and you'll find them there. Grok. There's the dictionary version, and then there's the actual quote excerpt from the book. I need you to grok this. All right. That's the degree that your cross-functional team needs to get this. What is that? Well, I've got the definitions there. The way I think of grok, first of all, what language is grok?
Martian.
It's Martian. Yes. You've learned your first Martian word. Congratulations. All right. Told you we were going to talk about this Mars-Venus thing. Yeah. It is so that you know something so well, it becomes a part of you, and you become a part of it. There is no longer a way to separate this. I left off the last part of the quote because it was kind of disgusting. It was literally the Martian guy who was actually human. They were talking about making a stew of him when he died, all right? So that the people that he had inspired and him could no longer be separated at all. They were completely part of each other. That's the degree I need that cross-functional team to get this, the Agile's principles and values, okay? Middle management budget games caused by unknowns of regulatory compliance. Okay, your name? Jeff. Jeff, pleasure. Jeff, all right. I need you to implement a new product. It has to be completely compliant with all the regulations in your particular sector. When's it going to be done?
2 months.
Great, I need it in a week. And I'm only giving you 25 cents to do it. All right, it's okay. Yeah.
Sounds like you're at my work.
Yeah. We know this guy, right? Or gal. I'm non-gender specific. All right, so we play these games, right? We do the annual budget cycle. How many people have fun with the annual budget cycle? It's just like fun, right? You get out the fifth of whiskey and you start just writing stuff because, no. So already, executives, senior leadership already has a number in play in their mind. This is what the board says we're going to devote to X, Y, and Z strategic initiatives. This is how much we're going to devote to maintenance. They already have the number in mind. That's the number. Why play the game? Why have to get out the fifth of whiskey? Instead, you have to do two things. I recommend two things. One, and you're going to have problems tying this into regulatory compliance. I'll get to that down the way, right? One, take your annual performance cycle, the annual review, right? Divorce it from bonuses. Divorce it from compensation. Where did I get this idea? It's a book called Beyond Budgeting, and then there's Implementing Beyond Budgeting. Turns out the Europeans got there first, and it kind of upsets me. All right, so where they've implemented this, what they found was that they can get more work, high quality work, and something called compliance by divorcing the annual performance life cycle from compensation and bonuses. Now, what did they do with the compensation and bonuses? Compensation, really simple. How many years have you been doing this? What is the benchmark for someone who's done that? What is the cost of living offset? Congratulations, that's your pay. Right? Bonus cycle. How well did your team do this last quarter? And they look at that every quarter. And what we look at are quality metrics. Defect, density, things like we use all these automated tools in Agile, right? Style, code style. How well do they conform to code style? What's their percentage of automated unit tests, coverage, percentage of automated integration test coverage, right? The number of automated deployments made into the various different life cycles, development, integration, system test, pre-production, packaged up, ready to go to, all right? They get judged on that. And you can put compliance in there as a metric. Tie the team performance, not individual performance, to that. Suddenly, you're firing on 3 different things, which is called an influence strategy. It's one of those secret ninja coach skills, right? Influence strategy. Daniel Pink, Drive. Anyone read it? Okay. Anyone watch the 8-minute video? All right, the 8-minute video is great on YouTube, particularly the animated one, right? A lot of fun. A lot of studies, academic, went out in the world. Some group called the Federal Trade Commission licensed a study across many populace, longitudinal study. So it's real. It's not, one of those, yeah, there was a study, I looked at 5 people and this is what they told me, right? Number one thing that drives people is intrinsic reward of doing a job well. Number one driver. Pay? No, doesn't actually provide an incentive. So long as you are compensating them at market level. What you're doing is you're taking pay off the table. It's no longer an incentive. It can be a disincentive. Pay your people well, that's all, but not too much. They looked at bonus structures. Turns out, bonus structures have close to 0 bearing on a person's performance. But number 2 influencing strategy, peer pressure. Turns out when I put that bonus structure at the team level, the peers start putting peer pressure on each other to do a job well. And there is such a thing as geek pride. Ninjas versus pirates. They will try and one-up each other, hence the going home at the the A train and coming back and gold plating something. Excellent. All right. Third one, oh yeah, is the compensation, reward structure, and yes, holding someone accountable for not measuring up to performance threshold. All right, so that's that. You get rid of the middle management budget game. I also recommend, if you go read the book, that you try and convince your CFO, good luck, gotten it once, try and convince your CFO to look at a quarterly budget cycle, fixed cost projects of long-lived teams. So if you say, I've got $1 million budget for the annual, okay, that's $250 a quarter. That gets me essentially 5 teams of 5 people. You lock it at that. You take it off the table again. It's no longer an issue. It's easy math that my 11-year-old can do, maybe even my 6-year-old. But you keep a 18-month rolling quarterly outlook. So you're looking near term and long term. Then you get the CFO to take those numbers, bundle them up in nice annual numbers for external. All right? So it's internal numbers, external numbers. All right, next one. Decision-making bias and leadership caused by regulatory compliance worries. What happens with leaders when a new piece of legislation is passed? New regulation comes down. I watched Frank Dodd tear through people's careers. You'd think Ebola virus had broken out. I don't know why. They became so risk-averse. Risk-averse. How should they be thinking instead? Risk mitigation, right? And risk acceptance. How do you do risk acceptance? Well, it turns out it's naturally built into the Scrum process framework, right? Because every 2 weeks, you're dealing with it. You're mitigating the risk every 2 weeks. So you're taking on the risk at the beginning of the iteration, you're dealing with it through the 2 weeks, and at the end, you're actually putting out something that is supposed to be working, and the risk has been mitigated, all right? You don't have to run away. Every 2 weeks, you have the point in time, 2 to 4 weeks. Every 2 to 4 weeks, you have the point in time which, if you have properly aligned your compliance auditors, internal, they come to the review and they come to the planning session. They are in there so that you are meeting your compliance every 2 to 4 weeks, okay? That's the bias. Not understanding the effects of outsourcing the wrong things. I had a beautiful graph for this, I promise. Product life cycle, internal product, external product. What do I mean by product? It can be a system, it can be multiple systems, basically any logical unit, all right? It goes through a life cycle. You have early stage development, you have growth, you have maturity, you have decline, and then retirement, right? Eric Ries, Lean Startup. How many people have read it? Interesting study that he did in there. Don't know how much of a broad longitudinal study it was, but you know what? I've seen this pattern. I told him I'm ticked at him because he wrote it before I did. It's all about the royalties. There are natural places where you need to insource and outsource, okay? Early stage development is all about subject matter expertise. You are trying to grow something that gives you a strategic advantage. If you're not doing something in IT that gives you a strategic advantage, why are you doing it? Don't know. That should have been part of your governance. All right? You use your internal people in the early stage development. You use a hybrid of internal and external folks in the growth stage. You can completely outsource during the maturity and decline, right? What you're doing there is you're mitigating your own risk of people knowing your system and knowing how it's going to react when a new requirement comes. Because you will always be doing maintenance and enhancements, right? Then when you get out here to retirement, there's probably another system coming in. So you go back to that hybrid. You bring your subject matter experts back, and you slowly bring it internal. Excellent, thank you. All right, so do you see the difference on where you insource and outsource in that cycle? How many people just outsource stuff? Everything. You'll take a new idea and you just completely, we're sending this to China. There's another problem here. You don't set up the, they're called structures for fulfillment, okay? Or organizational structures. Now, organizational structure isn't, the family tree of the corporation, right? It literally is all the structures you need in play in order to be successful. Governance and compliance being part of that, right? When we outsource things completely overseas, you have to make sure you have that structure for governance and compliance in play. Perfect example. Major financial services firm decided to send their development to China. They'd been in India. They decided to go ahead, India was getting too expensive, cost of living over there. Well, let's find some more cheap labor. We'll go to China instead. Okay, first of all, IT is not a second-class citizen. Stop treating it like such, considering it's your strategic advantage of your company. 90% of all products and services today have an IT component. If you're not thinking of it strategically, go home, turn off your lights, close the door, please. All right? Now, I know that's kind of ugly, but that's how serious this is, okay? Another thing that you need to do is when you put a team overseas, it needs to be just like that Special Forces A team. Completely autonomous and encapsulated. They can make all their own decisions. They can react to fire. They can figure out how to solve the problem. But what do? Typically? What's the pattern? We have analysts here, and we have testers in another location, and we have developers in another location, right? If you're doing test-driven development, and you should be, if you're doing acceptance test-driven development, and you should be, if you're doing any kind of test-first development, all three of those people have to work together side by side, looking at the same piece of code at the same time. Yeah, you can use desktop virtualization and the remote desktop and GoToMeeting and Citrix and some of the other ones, right? You can use all those tools, right? But there's a couple things in here. Sustainable pace. If you have people here sharing a screen with people in India, who's burning the midnight oil? You think that's sustainable? What about for their kids? You think that parent isn't at some point in time going to get fed up and say, I've had it. I'm not working 18 hours a day anymore. And yours truly here worked 90 hours a week when I was running teams on 6 continents. It was nuts. And I went almost nuts. Set up the team so that you have the governance structure in every single place and decision-making can be done in every single place. It's really easy. It just makes sense. But we don't do that. Okay, how are we doing? Okay. Allowing process language and regulations to cause a focus on quality processes. I think I've beat this horse, but I'll just say it one more time. All right. integrate governance and compliance into the Agile practices, but don't let the compliance and the quality assurance practices dictate what the team does. Flip it upside down and have the team itself give them the vision and the constraints of the compliance, and then solicit the ideas from the team to figure out how that team can best address that. All right? I spend 80 to 90% of my time teaching managers to stop managing and start leading. Well, I'm a project manager. I need to manage projects. Actually, no, you don't. Not if you're leading well. All right? So put that structure in place so that the team itself can self-govern. All right? That's a tough one. That one's popular at the lead life jacket companies. Regulatory compliance is an excuse. We can't change because we would be non-compliant. We can't adopt Agile. We can't be Agile, which is the correct way of saying that. Agile is an adjective, right? We can't be Agile and meet all our regulatory compliance. Actually, yeah, you can. It's literally, can you put a structure in place that allows you to adapt? You now have to stop thinking about how you're going to conform to the regulation. Start thinking about how you're going to put a framework in place that allows you to conform to the regulation, plus not let the next regulation affect you, right? And then the next one comes along, and you just kind of roll with it. Where I have two companies, one has to deal with the FAA. It has nothing to do with software. It's airplanes, lean manufacturing. That company, they get it. They're not thinking about the actual FAR, Federal Aviation Regulations, right? Instead, the FAR is there. They are going to put a framework in place to conform to it, while not slowing down the company. All right, next one. Regulatory compliance stunts sustainable innovation. I had this beautiful graphic. Where? Is the guy kind of like that? Where does innovation come from? Where? Slack time. Oh, whoa. All right, I need 100% utilization, right? No, I know that's obscene. I want 80% utilization, right? Never mind that if I take out holidays, that gets me to 80% utilization, right? We hear these things. It's this joke that we tell ourselves, right? Innovation comes from slack time. There's two kinds of innovation. There's disruptive innovation, and then there's the innovation that really counts for regulatory compliance, which is this extension innovation. Do you know how this is built? No. I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's got a laser. Yeah, I know how it's built. It's got a laser. It's got 3 buttons, 2 on the side, a little pocket here for batteries, and there's 2 batteries. But is that really how it's built? How's the battery built? How's the laser built? And it goes on and on and on and on. Innovation stacks upon innovation. That's technology, how it evolves through civilization over thousands and thousands of years. It builds upon itself. That's that extension, right? Well, it turns out if you give people just a little slack time, they'll find ways to be compliant and get faster. So how have I done this before? Once a month, we have a free-for-all day. This happened to be a financial services company, so we even let them not wear a tie or a suit. So we brought everybody together and said, you know what, for today, we got this from Zappos. I shamelessly steal. Today, here's your agenda. You're not allowed to open email unless you are on the service desk for Tier 1 support. You're not allowed to answer the phone. You are hereby allowed to do anything you want for the whole day. Condition is you have to pair up with at least one other person, and you have to demonstrate it at the end of the day. It doesn't even have to be work related. First time did this, took a team that wasn't doing test-driven development. Suddenly they had a test harness and a test framework and an integration server. They never had time to implement these things, and that was always their excuse. Well, I don't have time to do test-driven development because I don't have time to stand up a continuous integration server. So what did they do? They stood up a continuous integration server and created a test harness. They got 30% faster as a team. Numbers don't lie. Create slack time. Okay? Gave you some light reading for the insomnias. This is your list. Okay? I pulled a lot of this from there. To wrap up, I really hope that I've given you some nuggets tonight for being agile and still meeting your regulatory compliance. All right? Turns out regulatory compliance is just something else that needs to be done. It shouldn't be a big deal. It should be integrated, though, into whatever practices that you're doing. And it should be down at the team level. If you're doing Scrum, that means it's integrated into the daily stand-ups. It's integrated into the 4 levels of planning, right? If you're doing Kanban, it's visible right there in front of you. I'm hopeful that if I can get people doing just some of these basic things, my hope is that we, as a civilization, can meet the full intent of what those regulations were all about in the first place, and still provide value back to the civilization and the products and services that we offer up. I think if you do this, you'll have a good start. Because that's really, at the end of the day, what this is all about. Yeah, we got to provide an income for people. We've got to provide value back to civilization. And we've got to be truthful, and have integrity, and be, you look at most of the regulations that have been passed, Frank Dodd, one of them, transparent, which happens to be an agile value, right? I think we can do that. Anyway, that was all I had to share with you. You've been great. I hope my Mac still works. We'll see.
Send it to me and I'll put it up.
Okay, all right, off. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over. You've been great. Thank you.